Today's title, as I said, is Gotta Let It Out. Gotta let it out. We're going to be talking about expressing our worship today, about letting it out, not keeping it under wraps. But there's an important verse in the Bible, an important command that's given to us from God. And this is what it is. I want you to go with me to Mark chapter 12, verse 30. And this is what it has to say. It says, love the Lord your God with what? All your heart. And with what? All your soul. And with what? All your mind, and with all your strength. That's a lot of alls there. And I believe that what God is trying to say is, listen, this is not a suggestion. This is a command that God has given us. And he's saying that you need to love the Lord your God with all you've got. He's saying every part of you, every fabric of you, every piece of you, that we give that all over to him and we express our love to him. Why? Because of the grace that has been poured out on you and I. And so what he's saying to us is that it's an all type of relationship. And so I got 2 points today. Let me forewarn you, and I think I'm a kind pastor because I do this. You're going to need to get out a helmet today, and you're going to get out the steel toe boots, man, because I'm coming after those toes. So I'm sorry, girls, if you got your toes done this weekend, I'm coming after them. Because I believe that God wants to shake some things up in our lives today. That we are not, a church that's willing to embrace the status quo. Listen, guys, there is something that is happening. There is a shaking that is happening in our land. And listen, the church, the believers, the disciples of Jesus Christ, we need to respond. There needs to be a response in us to leave this place and say, I am not the same. I have a different view of worship. I have a different view of living life now. My eyes have been opened to see the glory of God and that he wants to do something in this time. And I'm willing to embrace whatever it is that he's wanting to do in me and through me. And that's that loving him. That's that giving him our all. So 2 points today. Number one is this. It's not love if it's not expressed. Let me say that again. It's not love if it's not expressed. Isn't it interesting how you'll have people, I believe Jesus, I love God, but you can't tell? But on the other side of it, you see a young couple in love, there's no question. They're in love. I remember one time sitting in the locker room getting ready for football practice. These two punks come up to me. Calling them punks. They didn't have no girlfriends, man. And they come up blasting me. They said, hey, we see that you're sprung for that girl, Veronica. We had that term, sprung. Anybody ever hear that term, sprung? He's like, boy, do I. Yeah, come on, got a witness over here. But these guys jam me up. They're like, yeah, you're sprung, man. And they're saying it like a bad thing. So at first I wanted to kind of deny it because it sounded like a negative thing. And I'm like, wait, man, you fools, you don't even have girlfriends. You're talking to me about being sprung for a girl. Come on. At least I got somebody that is interested. But what sprung means is you're all in on that relationship. It was different. That relationship with my girl, we met in junior high. And that relationship was different than my relationship with my brother. It was different than my relationship with my mom and dad. It was different than my relationship with my friends down the street. It was different than the relationship with the football team. There was something different. And what I was willing to do because I was sprung, come on, I was in love, is I was willing to forego time with all of them, and I really looked forward to the time with her. Does that make sense? And here's the thing is that they noticed that we were in love. At first I'm like, man, how'd they find out? Was somebody like wiretapping our phone conversations? Anybody have that long phone cord? We had that one that started out about this long. By the end of our, me living at home, it was about 32 feet. Man, I was like pulling that stretchy cord. It's under the door. And I was thinking, was somebody like looking in and peering in, wiretapping those phone conversations? Does somebody accidentally, kind of wedge in and steal one of those love letters? We used to fold them. Did anybody used to fold those letters, and give it to them? They pull the little tab, whole thing. Come on, man. I'm speaking to somebody over here on the left side. You guys know what I'm talking about. And I'm thinking, did somebody steal one of those and read our love letter? Did somebody wiretap our phone? No. They knew we were in love because we expressed our love. And that's something that you have to understand, that it was love expressed that made it real. Real to me, real to the one that I loved, and real to others. And that's why I say to you today, if it isn't expressed, it isn't love, my friend. Let me tell you this, though. I know when it comes to worship, because that's what we're really talking about today. I know that some of you are panicking because you're going, okay, so now I need to express it. I need people to know that I love Jesus. And you're going, okay, what can I do? What's required of me? Listen, nobody has to go to In-N-Out after church today and stand in line and start singing Awesome God. Like, you don't have to do it. I know some of you are tempted now. I know that I just picked that up from the Spirit. Somebody was thinking about doing it. I'm just messing with you. That's not what God is requiring. And I want to show you something because I want to encourage you. Some of you are a lot better at worshiping than you actually think. See, because you compare yourself to people that are on a stage and you go, I could never do that. I could never sing. I could never play. I'm kind of reserved and I'm kind of shy, so I can't see myself bouncing around like a human pogo stick during, a song. Like, that's just not me. And so then you think to yourself that I'm really not great at worship. I'm not really a worshiper. I've had people tell me that. No, I'm not really a worshiper. The worshipers are the people on the worship team. But I want to shake up that thinking today, and I want you to think in a different way. I want you to realize that most of you in this room, you're a lot better at it than you actually think you are. So here's the thing that you need to know is that to express means to convey a thought or feeling in words or by gestures and conduct. I want to put the emphasis on the word conduct today. And listen to this. If love being expressed to God is worship, then I want you to see something. Go with me to Hebrews chapter 6, verse 10. This is a really great verse, and I believe it's going to mean something different to you today. It says this, God is not unjust. He will not forget your work and the love you have shown him. So do you see how you can show God love by this? As you have helped his people and continue to help them. Do you realize that when you get outside of yourself and you start pouring into somebody else, you start discipling somebody else, you take half of your sandwich and break it in half and give it to someone else. When you treat people kindly, you treat God's kids right, you know what? You're actually worshiping. Do you see how that's so different? So if all I'm telling you is that this worship experience is all you got, this 20 minutes a week, that's kind of dismal, but what if you start to think differently? That the way you treat God's kids is actually an act of worship. And some of you people in this room, I've known many of you for many years. I ran into somebody out in the hallway today. Come on, I'm not going to mention you by name, but we haven't seen each other in 20 years. But I still have a love for that guy. We saw each other, and there was a connection that was almost like we hadn't, ever skipped a beat. And I just think about that the kindness that so many of you pour out and the generosity that so many of you pour out, you don't even realize that you're an incredible worshiper. You're an incredible worshiper. And some of you need to hear that today because you feel as though you're not, but you are. The love that you have shown him, you've shown God love. You've expressed his love publicly. You've expressed your love publicly by loving his kids. I'm going to tell you, there's no way to irritate people faster than to treat their kids bad. Right? Yes. We're talking Mama Bear, Mama Lion. She's like, just devour you, right? Don't mess with Mama's kids. Don't mess with Daddy's kids. I coached sports for so many years, and I'm going to tell you, man, I saw the craziest stuff on the field. And what was it all about? Because somebody was messing with their kids. And I think about it in the same way. There's no other way to bless somebody greater than to love on their kids. And to think that God's kids are roaming this earth. There's a little over 7 billion of us right now. And how we treat his kids really matters. It's an act of worship. It's an act of pouring out our love upon him. I was thinking about in my own life, reflecting even this week as I was studying, how do I treat people? How do I treat God's kids? How do I conduct myself outside the walls of this, movie theater, or we'll call it our church? How do you respond to somebody who is rude to you? Do you realize that that's a time for you to get your worship on? Some of you don't even realize it, man, you've been worshiping in Walmart all week. You've been worshiping in Home Depot when you went to grab that last board and somebody else grabbed it and just walked off like they didn't care. You're like, oh, wait, my hand was almost on it. Do you realize that when somebody treats you rude, it's an opportunity to start worshiping God? It's an opportunity for you to start pouring your love out on them. What about when somebody tells you to read between the lines on the freeway? Anybody ever do that before? You're like, I don't want to read between the lines. I want to knock you out, sucker. But it's an opportunity to worship in your car. And they don't know about your worship, but it's an opportunity for you to get alone with God and just say, you know what, God, I bless them. I don't know what they're going through, man. Life is probably tough. And I'm just going to bless them, God. Bring good news to them. Help them correct that attitude. Help them get in line and look more like me. No, I'm just kidding. Of course, look more like Jesus, of course. How do you do what you do when no one's looking? Integrity issues. It's the way you love God. You're actually worshiping God when your private life matches your public life, my friend. It's an act of worship because you're walking in love and truth. And you're walking in love because you don't want to hurt and grieve the heart of your Father. That's loving him. How do you treat people and talk about them when they don't do, when they don't do what you want them to, or when they don't take your advice? Have you ever had that happen? You give some what you think is wise advice and they don't take it. Woo! It's an opportunity to worship. It's an opportunity to worship. That's why Hebrews 6:10, as we just said, just remember the love that you've shown God. How do we do that? That we help his people and we continue to help them. It's a really important point that you get this. So my question for you today is your love undeniable, indisputable to others on the outside? Do they see it? Because I said earlier, if love is not expressed, it's not love. Do they see it? Do they know it? Do they feel it when they're around you? Do they feel encouraged? Do they feel uplifted? Do they feel the help of God working through your hands? Do they feel the help of God working through your checkbook? Got really quiet in here on that one. But do people feel that? Do they feel that help is on the way? That good news has come? That the Spirit of God that resides on the inside of you is now on the scene and that hope has arrived? Do people feel that when you're around? Because if they do, I'm going to tell you, you are an amazing worshiper. You're an amazing worshiper. And if that is your life, continue to do so, my friend. And if you see that you've been deficient in that area in life, then it's just time to simply step up. The Holy Spirit wants to come right alongside you and help you move through that. But what I want to do is I just want to be just as I was that day with those young guys harassing me about my girl. I was guilty as charged, man. I was guilty as charged. There was no denying I was in love with that girl, head over heels. I want to be guilty as charged with God as well. That when people look at me and they say, hey, something's different about you, and I said, it's God, and they say, I believe it. I want to be guilty as charged. Do people say that? Will they say that about you? When you say it's God, they say, I believe it. Be guilty as charged because, as we said, it isn't love if it's not expressed. I've got a second thing that I want to share with you today. And number 2 is that it isn't love expressed if you don't guard it or if you won't guard it. Okay, let me say it again. It isn't love expressed if you won't guard it. This is the point where I need you to get out the helmet. So everybody, come on, get out your helmet. Let's put our helmets on. Let's lace up those steel-toe boots because it's going to get real right now. I need to have an honest conversation. Listen, in this moment, I'm just going to tell you, I need to pastor you and not pet you. And there's so many pastors that want to pet you. They want to stroke you. Hey, you don't like that? Okay, I'll turn it around and rub it the other way. Listen, I've got to tell you the truth because it matters so much in this time that we're living in. It isn't love expressed if you won't guard it. See, we guard the things that we love. That's the reason why you lock the doors. This morning I left really early in the morning to get here, and I forgot to lock the front door. So I got out of my truck and walked all the way back to the front door, and I locked the door. Why? Because the one that, my wife was home alone. I didn't want anybody walking through that door. Why did I do that? I guarded her because I love her. We guard the things that we love. So that's why we lock those doors. That's why some of you got that new bomb ride that you got. Why'd you put an alarm on it? Because you're guarding it because you love that thing. What's one of the funniest things is people's love for dogs. How many of you out there got a dog? We got a lot of dog lovers out there. The funny thing about dog lovers is that they'll guard that dog even though the dog's supposed to guard them. And it's the funniest thing because have you ever seen this scenario? The dog gets out of the gate, it's early in the morning, and you see the dog run off. So then you see this person chase her, come back, Bobo, and they've got their shirts inside out, or backwards. They've got like flip-flops, hair's all crazy. They don't even care what it looks like to the neighbors. They're just like, come back, Bobo, and it's so funny because your love will drive you to do some crazy stuff and express it publicly. But the funny thing is when it's not your dog, you're like, dang, man, good luck. You should have locked the gate. It's like you have no love. But when it's yours, you love that thing, man. You're out there looking like a fool in front of the whole city. And it doesn't matter. Why? Because you want to grab what you love, guard it, bring it back home, and put it in a safe place. And see, God is serious about guarding something that I need to talk to you about today. In Proverbs 4:23, very familiar verse. And often when there's a familiar verse, we, even in Christendom, because so many of us watch so many messages online and stuff, and I've heard that verse so many times, we actually, don't think of the weight that it actually carries just because it's familiar. But today we really need to get into this familiar verse, and we need to dig in and understand that it isn't love expressed if you won't guard it. Proverbs 4:23, God wants to talk to you today about something that's important that you guard. He says, above all else, man, that's crazy to say that. Above all else, above scripture reading, above everything, he's saying you got to do this. Guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. Do you realize that in the Bible, in the New King James Version, I believe the word heart is actually in the Bible 922 times. If God uses a word in Scripture 922 times, we probably should be paying attention to it. And what we're going to talk about is guarding our hearts when it comes to worship. Why? Because your heart is the epicenter of your worship. That it's the worship control center. This heart, this place right here. In light of kind of what's going on, in our society, or not our society, but just even here in our nation, and particularly here, it affects us right now. You guys have heard about, the cargo ships waiting off in the port, right, of Los Angeles and Long Beach. And I wanted to share this picture with you real quick. Can I get that up? You guys see that thing? That is massive. That is the MSC Golson. That is one of the largest, if not the largest ship on the planet right now. That thing is over 4 football fields long. And the thing that blew me away when I saw this ship is that it can carry almost 24,000 containers. Do you guys realize that? Like when that semi's driving past you, right, that big old, 48-foot or 53-foot trailer that's on there, it's bouncing all over the place. Do you realize that those little things are those trailers that are next to your car? And this ship can hold, I think it was 23,756. Come on, man, good memory here. And almost 24,000 of those containers. That's insane, right? But that entire ship is controlled by one thing, and it's called the bridge, right? And our life is controlled by the bridge. Your life, I believe you've been called to go big. Do you believe that? Yeah. God has a huge destiny on your life. You've been called to make a huge impact, maximum impact. But can I get to the picture of the bridge? Because you guys got to see this. Well, screen's a little weird, but we'll get there. But your heart is the control center. And what I want you to see in this picture, and there's some things that you need to be able to identify, is that your heart this control center consists of your intellect, your conscience, your character, your feelings. Up there on the top, I think we had thoughts, we had emotions, your will. But look over to the left side here. Do you guys see what that is? It's a thing called the captain's chair. And your heart has a space for a captain to sit in. One of the things you got to know is that captain's chair only has room for one. It's not room for 2, it's room for 1. But it's out of this bridge, it's out of this control center that your worship is determined, that the decisions of your life are determined. And what God is saying is, you got to guard this. You got to guard this thing. You have to guard, everything on the inside, your character, your feelings, your thoughts, your emotions, your intellect, your will, and your conscience. Those things need to be guarded. Because out of here, your worship is directed. And that chair, as I said, is reserved for the captain. Captain controls the ship. And here's the big question that I have for you. And this is a question mark that's sitting over that seat. Who's in control in your life? Who's sitting on the throne of your heart? Who's sitting on the throne of your heart? You know, I think in my own life that there's things that vie for that spot and fight for that spot. But God is the only one that is fit to be in that seat that controls that entire ship. Because see, my emotions are only seeing a little spot, as you saw on that picture. My will is only reading a little gauge. My conscience is just another little gauge or a button that's controlled. But the one that sits in that seat has to know where we're headed. And only God can know that. And so in my life, and I'm sure in yours, we need to ask this question. We need to take inventory today. What's guiding your ship? Because if it's something else sitting on the throne of your heart, guys, it's going to lead you astray. And let me just make this real for you right now. Some of you felt very close to God at some point. You felt that you could hear from him clearly. You felt that you had very clear direction in your life, where you needed to be going, how you needed to be raising your kids, how you need to be handling your finances. Every aspect of your life, you felt very clear. But you find yourself in a place with a lack of clarity. It can very well be that you have something else on the throne. Because in times of clarity, I've realized that in times of clarity, in times of breakthrough, in times where I had understanding and wisdom, I can say this, that I knew that God was on the throne in my life. And so today, if you're in that place, I just want to challenge you to start thinking right now, okay, what is in the throne? Is it God in the throne or is it something else? And this is where I need to be real with you right here. Is that the problem is that many of us have idols in our life. We have idols in our life. Sitting on this seat. And see, anything sitting on the throne of your heart, giving direction to your life, other than God, it's an idol, my friend. And by definition, an idol is anything that takes the place of God. And this is something that will wreck your worship. It'll derail your worship. And this is why I believe it's so important that we talk about this today, that yes, it isn't love unless it's expressed. And it isn't love expressed if we're not willing to guard it. And today, God is speaking to you and I, and he's saying we need to guard this thing. We need to guard that captain's chair. We need to ensure that God is in his rightful place. Because, we need to drill down. We need to be a little bit deeper here today. I believe we need to talk to real issues. Because see, some of us, what we don't realize is that the blessings that we prayed for, the answered prayers, we have taken the blessings and we've bumped the blesser out of the seat. And now the blessings are sitting in the seat. I've watched people say, oh, I'm so lonely and I'm just praying for a man, praying for a great guy to come into my life. Man, God brings a great guy into your life and boom, now he's sitting on the captain's chair. Some of us, God, I'm believing for finance and believing for a business. God gives you an incredible idea, and now all of a sudden, money's sitting on the throne. I've seen couples struggle with infertility and believing God for a child. And then that child comes, and everybody's so excited, but because it was such a hard road there, it's like, now we don't want to lose the child. Well, hey, if you can trust God to get it to you, you can trust him to keep. But instead, what do? We put the child on the throne, and now all of a sudden, all the directions and everything in your life are being controlled by whatever it is that you have on the throne. I've struggled in life where, man, I needed to chill. I needed to get away, so I picked up a hobby, and that hobby began to consume me. So God brought something to me to bring refreshment and a time of kind of just, decompressing, and now all of a sudden, it's like it's the only thing I can think about. I got to get that new thing. I got to add this thing to it. I got to, and we start getting consumed with the blessing. And so what do? We take the blesser off the throne and put the blessing on the throne. I know this is getting real, but is this not right, you guys? We are all tempted with this. And I wrote down this point, and man, it really shook me up, as I was studying, and I just said, I found myself thanking God for what took his place. You just need to sit on that thought for a second. Have you ever found yourself thanking God for something that took his place? Today's a day of really turning, you guys. It's a day of turning and saying, you know what? It isn't love expressed if I won't guard it. I'm going to guard my heart, because this is what you need to know, is that worship to God is guarding the captain's chair of your heart. Worship to God is ensuring that you've kept him in his rightful place. Worship to God is evicting the idols that don't belong there. Do you realize that Satan has never paid for anything? Do you realize that Satan has never created anything? But he wants his idols to rest upon the throne of your life. And let me challenge you once again, guys, don't play church musical chairs with that throne of your heart. I see it, guys, I've been in church for 40 years, and I've seen this happen over and over and over again, that God is on the throne on Sunday, but on Monday it's musical chairs. Time to move over, God, because I got career. It's got to sit there. And then Tuesday comes, and now my emotions want to sit in the throne. And then Wednesday comes, my lust wants to sit in the throne. Thursday comes, it's like, oh, my kids got sports, so sports are on the throne. Saturday comes, I skip Friday, but we'll skip Friday, give you a day off. Saturday comes, and it's college football, so now college football is on the throne. And then Sunday comes back around, and we're like, yeah, come on, God, hop back in the captain's chair. And some of us, that's the way we're living our life. And we're going, I don't understand why I don't feel connected to God. I don't understand why I feel alone. I don't understand. I hear these Christians talk about joy. I hear them talking about feeling so fulfilled in their relationship with God. I don't understand, because I don't know what that feels like. And the reason you don't know what it feels like is because you got the wrong thing sitting in the throne of your life. Are you guys good with me? Yeah. Come on, I feel like I've got to tell you the truth. Like I said, I got to pastor you. I can't pet you. There's not enough time, guys, to play games anymore. As we said at Hub City, we're seeking to make disciples of Christ, not churchgoers. And we have an entire culture that is cool with being churchgoers. But I believe that God is going to raise up a generation of people, both young and old, that are going to declare the glory of God in these days. Guys, can you see it? Jesus is coming back, man. Everything is being staged. He's ready. It's coming. And I'm going to use every breath, every second I have to ensure that people know that there's a God that loves them, and there's a God that has an incredible plan for them, and that their destiny can be shifted in a moment. But for you and I, how does that shift happen today? We need to get some stuff out of that captain's chair. We need to guard that captain's chair. See, Satan doesn't care what you put in the throne of your heart as long as it's not God. He gives you multiple choice, man. He gives you a bunch of stuff. And he doesn't even care what you use. Just don't put God there. That's his goal. Because whoever sits on the throne of your heart controls your life and controls your worship. Can I be real transparent with you guys? I'm going to smash some more toes, I'm sorry. But I got to do it. I see this really wild trend. For 10 years, I coached football for little guys, and I was a head coach for a high school. So I saw from little all the way through. And I coach club track. So little guys from 5 all the way to 18. And I saw this insatiable desire for parents to live vicariously through their children. They came in at 5 years old, and little Billy Joe was going to play for the Vikings next year. At 5 years old, he was going pro, man. Going pro. Dad was convinced, mom was convinced. And I'm not going to pick on other people, I'm going to pick on myself. So here my son comes and he shows that he's got a little bit of talent. And so I'm coaching, and we're out on the field 5 nights a week, playing on the weekends. Nothing wrong with that. But as he began to get better at what he was doing, he ended up running for the U.S. junior track and field team. 5 nights, 3 hours a night, running, training. And then they would run on Saturdays, and that was the qualifier. And Sundays were the finals. So Saturday were your qualifying day. Sunday was the day when we saw who the big dog was out on the track. And we had a decision to make. We had a decision to make. And it was unpopular. But I got a revelation from God, and I stood on it. And it was this: Steve, your son Steven will be a student athlete for maybe 10 years max, but he's got to be a man of God his entire life. And it was that revelation that just rocked everything. And so we ended up saying, Steven, you can run Saturdays, you can qualify, but we're doing church on Sundays. We're going to honor God, and we're going to make him and put him on the throne of our lives and trust him that if you're supposed to have whatever it is that you're chasing, that God will open a supernatural door. And it was a hard decision because inside, guys, I have to be honest with you. I was living through this boy, man. He was far better in football than I ever was. He was far better on the track than I ever was. And I was proud of him. But you know what? Steven didn't go to the pros. And he never ran in the Olympics. Just like 99% of the other kids and the soccer players and the baseball players and everybody on their gazillion travel teams and everything else. Parents, I need to challenge you today. I need to pastor you, not pet you. Be careful what you put on the throne of your life, because those idols then become accessible to your generations. Let me show you this in scripture as we close. Go with me to 2 Kings 17, 38 through 41. It's a really interesting story. I'm not going to unpack it for the sake of time, but I just want to read this to you. Listen to it. It says, "Do not forget the covenant I made with you, and do not worship other gods. You must worship only the God, the Lord your God. He is the one who will rescue you from all your enemies." How many of you need somebody that can rescue you? Come on, you need somebody that can rescue you when you need rescuing. But listen to this. In verse 40, it says, "But the people would not listen and continue to follow their former practices. So while these new residents worship the Lord," get that? They worship the Lord, capital, meaning that they're speaking of God, the God that we know. It says this: they also worshiped their idols. And to this day, their descendants do the same. My friend, it is time for us as a church, the church of God, meaning big C church, not little C church, Hub City. I'm speaking to the entire church. It is time that we wake up and that we guard our worship. We guard our hearts, my friend, that we are very, very intentional on what we allow into that throne, because that throne is the epicenter of your worship. That throne is the thing that you're going to pass over to your children, because they're saying, hey, it worked for mom and dad, so it's going to work for us. And everything just slips right below the radar. So we all have some decisions that we need to make today. What's sitting on the throne? What's sitting on the throne of your heart?